NRIs across the world are always concerned about their Indian taxation regulations applicable to them so that they can meaningfully participate in the India growth story and remain compliant with the tax regulations of India. Filing of Indian income tax return is the foremost requirement to remain compliant with the Indian regulations. Today, ICACFP Rajit Kothari will discuss 5 essential advices for NRIs to meaningfully file their Indian income tax return in an appropriate manner. Advice number 1. Figure out the tax residential status correctly. The residential status of an NRI is determined by the physical presence in India during and across the last few financial years. The residential status determines the scope of taxation in India, meaning as to what will be taxed and what will not be taxed in India. Therefore, it is very important to determine it correctly and file the return in accordance to that particular residential status of the NRI. Advice number 2. Disclosure of all important information. The NRIs are required to disclose the exact number of days stayed in India during the financial year and during last 4 financial years. Over and above this, the taxpayer identification number of their country of tax residence and the country where they are ultimately tax residents also need to be disclosed in the tax return in an appropriate manner. Advice number 3. Take advantage of the income tax benefits available to NRI. There are several tax concessions in terms of beneficial rates of tax available to NRIs under the Indian income tax law on investment incomes as well as capital gain incomes. Apart from that, there are several other exemptions available to NRIs on certain kinds of reinvestments out of proceeds of sale of certain investments if some conditions are satisfied. The NRIs must study this thoroughly and take optimum advantage to minimize the effective tax liabilities in India. Advice number 4. Take advantage of the treaty provisions that are available to NRIs. India today has got double taxation avoidance agreements with most nations across the world. Depending upon the country of residence of the NRI can avail concessional rates of tax as well as tax exemptions, complete exemptions on several Indian incomes such as dividend, interest or even capital gains, depending upon the terms that are laid under this treaty. The only thing that is expected out of the NRI in this case is to produce a tax residency certificate from the country of residence and to disclose it appropriately in the Indian income tax return. Hence, this will mitigate the overall tax liability of the NRI by a very significant extent. Advice number 5. Disclosure of Indian incomes in the country of tax residence of the NRI. The NRIs are generally tax residents of the country where they are normally residing in any part of the world. Most countries expect the NRIs to disclose their global incomes and thereby include their Indian incomes to be disclosed, and appropriate taxes shall be paid as per the laws of those particular countries. The credits of the Indian taxes that are paid are available to the NRIs while they are discharging their tax liabilities as per the terms of the double taxation avoidance agreement. In order to remain compliant, it is very important for the NRIs to report their Indian incomes and assets as expected by the domestic laws of those countries.
This is the format of an international tax compliance report prepared by us for a NRI having Indian incomes and assets converted from INR as reported in the Indian income tax return to the respective currency of the country where the NRI is residing. which is US and USD in this case. It has a split of all different kinds of incomes that the NRI has in India, which are to be reported in the jurisdiction of that particular NRI. Further, the details of the different kinds of incomes and assets are in the format in which the tax return has to be filed in the jurisdiction of the NRI, which is US in this case, depending upon the country of residence of the NRI, which could be any part of the world. This format is customized as per the Indian income tax return converted into the foreign currency and as per the applicable tax year in that particular country, which becomes very convenient for the NRI to report those incomes and assets in that particular country.
Hope this video added value to NRIs in terms of complying with the Indian taxation affairs. Contact us for any further information that is required and follow us for such insightful content relating to the world of finance and taxation for NRIs.